Would you be concerned if you were a West Ham fan right now?
Well, obviously, I've been very hands-on and on the inside of it only a couple of months ago. All the things he said in 6 months there ring true. You know, with them, they've had a stinker of a first game of the season, Liverpool away. You couldn't wish for a worse one. They've spent £100 million on 9 players, so obviously a lot of players that have got to fit in. And I think he's still learning about his team. He's learning about the new players that have come through the door. He's learning about the squad of players he's got at this moment. Best formations. It probably took us a while at West Ham when we come through the door to suggest, look, certain players can't play in the back four. You've got to put bodies around certain players because there's a lack of pace in there. So you've got to cover them up a little bit. It was on average, the oldest squad in the Premier League last season. It needed freshening up, and it wasn't until probably, I think it was the 5th of May, in 7 months previous. I'm just trying to create what Pellegrini's gone into. The 7 months that I was at West Ham, we never left a senior player in the stand because we didn't have one fit. The first time we done that was James Collins on the 5th of May, which is quite incredible.
It's nearly a whole season.
Yeah, and Manuel's gone into this season. Lanzini's out for the season, international injury.
Yeah, big loss.
Massive blow.
Andy Carroll, 3 months out through injury. Winston Reid. So 3 players straight away are out and not figuring. And he's got to incorporate 9 new faces. Liverpool away puts you on the back foot, you take a bit of hiding, and then you're at home. And you know what it's like, it doesn't take much for the West Ham fans to turn a little bit and leave the stadium. And he's right saying what he is. We need to unite as a football club.
Is that much easier said than done, Craig? You know what it's like at West Ham. You know what is demanded of that team by those supporters.
Yeah, but look, they don't. They're realistic as well. They don't. They're not over the top with what they demanded, and even spending a lot of money this season, they weren't sat there saying, "Well, we're going to break into the Champions League or even top 6." They just want to see their team be on the front foot, be able to play, be able to have a good go and show maximum effort. And they're really quite content with that. They like to see players with flair, of course they do. But what they won't accept is players hiding, players not taking responsibility. They won't accept that, then they will get on your back. And I believe there's just a culture at the club over the last couple of years where it's sort of been okay for someone else to do it. Arnautovic last year got him out of trouble quite a few times. I thought he's played his best football that I've seen him, because there's been plenty of times I've not been too sure or too keen on him. I thought under David Moyes, I thought he played his best football. And so he was a big plus. But then I look at a lot of the recruitment. My biggest concern with West Ham has always been, and even the goal they conceded against Bournemouth, the first goal, was pace. They struggle in the middle of the park. Now, you're going to go to Liverpool with Mark Noble and Wiltshire. They're going to get overrun. Without the ball, you're going to be in trouble because they can't get round. They can't get close enough. They ain't going to be able to affect the game when they don't have the ball. And again, against good teams and good players and players with pace, you have to be able to get close to people. You have to be able to stop them. And even, like I said, the first goal with Mark Noble was like, okay, they're looking at defenders. Yeah, the defenders could have done much better. But what about you, by the way? He's just run off you to the other side, and you can't even get anywhere near him. One, you've got to be aware of it. Your defensive midfield, you've got to be aware of him sneaking up behind your shoulder, trying to play on your shoulder, and then you've got to make sure you get the other side to him. You're biting away at him, but he just left him for dead. That's been a problem for West Ham for a few years. I see the one player they did have, who got round the pitch, who did have energy, who did have pace, was Coyote, and they got him he's gone to Crystal Palace. So I don't know how much Pellegrini's having to do with signings. He's fully aware of the player, who's bringing the players in. I don't know. I'm not at West Ham. I couldn't tell you that. I'm fully aware, by the way, that the owners like to have a say. The owners like to have a lot of pull. They get caught up in, who their son's seen on the PlayStation and which type of player they want to bring into the club. But is it the right club for the balance? Is it the right player for the club, for the balance of the team? And I just believe they've got that wrong, for the last 3-4 years now.
Well, I was just about to say, straight to you, Stuart, if Craig has observed that from the outside, whilst you were there, did you detect an air of players letting others do it rather than taking responsibility themselves?
I think it's an environment at West Ham that if the fans and the stadium get behind you, it can be a fantastic buffer for the team, and they really get going and whatever. If things go slightly wrong, it can be a poor environment for players to play in. It's understanding, you know, Bella's mentioned about, I think Manuel's looking at the side. I saw them play a version of 4-4-2, I think, against Bournemouth.
Which he's done at Man City as well quite a lot.
Yeah, which is fine at Manchester City. I think sometimes there's a learning curve. Can Mark Noble and Jack Wilshere, I think they both thrive when there's a holding midfield player.
They have to have a holder,
yeah. And they've got the legs and the energy to run around a little bit and pass and feed passes through. And it's just understanding, I think, game by game, the manager will pick those bits and pieces up. I think he's still learning about his squad of players. If you've brought 9 through the door straight away, and most of those were on the bench, by the way, at the weekend. You know, Yarmolenko, I don't think, started the games, and Diop wasn't in the side, and some of the big money signings have not played both games and played 90 minutes in both games.
Well, I mean, when you look at what has come into the club, you know, there are some decent names here that people have actually arrived. As Craig said, they've spent circa £100 million, and we didn't really recoup too much. You know, right at the top there, Anderson, you know, you can't accuse the owners of not having a go, can you, there?
That's been the biggest criticism, I think, from the fans to the owners, certainly with some of the protests that I saw last year. The fact is, the owner, or certainly I think it was aimed more at Mr Sullivan than ever it was potentially Mr Gold, but I may be wrong. It was, put your hand in your pocket, where's the money gone? It seemed to be the shout. Now, if you put £100 million down, if I was a fan, all of a sudden you sit back and say, hang on a minute, well, that was my major gripe being addressed. Now let's see what happens.
What do you make of Craig's question as well, though? How much cohesion do you think there is between the current manager and the purchase of these players? From your time at West Ham, who do you suspect is buying the players?
It's a difficult one. I wouldn't know who was and who isn't. I know that you know, the board certainly want to have their say on who comes through the door. I probably haven't enough knowledge to turn around and say the chairman buys all the players, or he doesn't.
Would it be the board, or would it be a director of football, or would it be the manager? Like, in your experience there, what I'm trying to say is, if the board have want to have a say in the signings, do they have sound advice? Do they take any sound advice from someone that's recommending these type of players?
I think the modern day board, the modern day chairman want to have hands on in regard to some of the signings that come through the door. I don't think that's healthy. I think if you're going to coach or manage the team, you've got to be the one that says, these are the players that I want. Give a list of those players to your chairman or to the director of football. They've got to go in the marketplace and financially deliver. If you can't get option 1, you get option 2 and so on. Otherwise, I'm not sure it works. I really don't. To have board members that get advised by agents to sign this player or sign that player, or to have one agent solely supplying one club with players,
it's not healthy.
He's got a vested interest, and that can't be healthy for any football club.
Surely that must have been raised, though.
Well, in my brief 7 months at the football club, we didn't go out and invest too much. We come in, we had a January transfer window, and at the end of the January transfer window, we left in the day after the last game of the season. We come in, done a job on a coaching point of view. The spec was keep the club in the Premier League, end of. We ended up, I think, spending, in fact, we turned over more money. I think Moisey ended up recouping about 25 million for the club last January.
Just out of interest, it doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong. I'm just interested to know, were any of those players that West Ham have signed, were they discussed while you were there at the club? Because quite often clubs will look at a player over a period of time, won't they?
Yeah.
Any of those names familiar?
Fredericks was.
So just
obviously Wilshere as well. Wilshere, I mean, every club in the Premier League probably discussed Wilshere. There's a multitude of players we looked at, but you're in a situation. I don't think there was a real clarity in regard to the financial budget. You know what I mean? That was a moving figure, if you like, in some ways. You know what I mean? How much is available? I don't think. And if you look, maybe potentially if the manager turns round and is on sort of quicksand and the chairman's decided that he's not going to be our manager come the summer and beyond, then I would suggest that a board of directors wouldn't give utopia to that manager and say, this is what we've got for you, go out in the marketplace.
Not just West Ham, the bottom of the table, but also the top of the table as well. Do we have to apply some perspective about the fact there are only 2 games played so far this season? And are we all guilty of reading far too much into who's going to be champions, who's going to do this, who's going down? Because if you looked at the table this time last year, after 2 games, I think West Brom were 3rd, Huddersfield were 2nd. So are we getting a bit caught up here?
No, but you looked. I didn't see West Brom getting relegated. I was very surprised by the rapid fall they had in a season. Huddersfield, we knew straight away we're going to be fighting relegation, which turned out to be the case. I still believe this year they're going to be fighting relegation. But I just the top 4, top 5, top 6 are going to be there. Going to be there. You're like your Man City's, Liverpool. I believe the 2 who are really going to fight for the league. Then your Chelsea's, your Spurs, your Man United's, Arsenal, just behind them lot. And you know what? After watching Newcastle as well Saturday, close hand, I believe there's going to be a big group of teams fighting relegation from 12 for, from actually top 10 going down. Getting into the relegation zone. The bottom half are all going to be in amongst the dogfight.